Let me ask you something, and I want you to stay with this thought for a moment. Have you ever shared time with someone, truly shared it, and felt a quiet feeling inside that told you this connection was different? Not just excitement, not just nervous butterflies, but something much deeper, something that made you feel as if he wasn't only looking at you, but actually understanding you, as if for the first time in a very long while someone could see the real person behind your smile, your words, and your silence. Then maybe another thought slowly appeared. You began asking yourself, does he feel this too? Is this connection as meaningful to him as it is to me, or have I created a story in my own mind? That question can stay with you for days, sometimes for months. It quietly follows you into ordinary moments and makes you wonder what is really happening beneath the surface. If you've ever asked yourself that question, I want you to know something important. There is absolutely nothing strange about it. It doesn't mean you're weak, needy, or imagining things. In many ways, it says something wonderful about your heart. It tells me you value genuine connection. You don't treat love like a game. You aren't simply chasing attention. You're searching for something honest, something lasting, something that feels real. And in a world where quick conversations, mixed signals, and temporary excitement are often mistaken for love, that kind of heart is rare. So stay with me until the very end, because what we're about to explore may completely change the way you understand the person you're thinking about right now. Most relationship advice spends all its time talking about attraction. It teaches you how to get someone's attention, how to keep them interested, how to make them text first, or how to become unforgettable. Those conversations have their place, but they often miss the deeper question that quietly lives underneath all of it. The real question isn't whether someone likes you for the moment. It isn't whether they enjoy spending time with you or find you attractive. The question that truly matters is much more powerful. Has your presence reached a place inside them that few people ever touch? Has something about you stayed with them even when you're not together? Because when that happens, everything begins to change in ways that are not always obvious. Real emotional connection rarely announces itself with dramatic speeches or perfect timing. More often it grows quietly. It appears in small moments, a lingering look that lasts just a second longer. A pause before they answer your message, a smile that arrives without effort when your name appears on their phone. These moments can seem ordinary until you notice how often they happen. Keep watching, because one simple sign near the end surprises almost everyone who hears it, and once you recognize it, you'll never see emotional connection the same way again. Think about the people you've met throughout your life. Many of them came and went without leaving much behind. You remember their faces, maybe even their names, but they didn't change the way you felt about yourself. Then there are a few rare people who somehow stay with you. Years later, you can still remember the way they listened, the comfort they brought into a room, or the calm you felt simply sitting beside them. Those people leave something behind that words cannot fully explain. Deep connection works exactly like that. It is not built only through exciting dates or perfect conversations. It grows through emotional safety, through moments when neither person has to pretend to be someone else, through laughter that arrives naturally and silence that never feels uncomfortable. When someone experiences that kind of peace with you, it becomes difficult to forget. Even if life becomes busy or circumstances create distance, a part of that connection often remains. That is why some people suddenly think about someone months later for no clear reason. It isn't always because they planned to. Sometimes the heart quietly remembers what the mind tried to organize and explain away. If you've ever experienced that, don't leave yet, because the next idea explains why these memories become stronger instead of weaker over time. Many people believe strong emotions always look dramatic. They expect grand gestures, constant messages, or endless declarations of love. Real feelings don't always appear that way. Sometimes they become visible in the smallest behaviors. A person may casually mention something you told them weeks ago, remembering details you assumed had been forgotten. They may ask about something that mattered to you because your happiness quietly became important to them. They may catch themselves comparing every new experience to moments they shared with you without even realizing it. These are not accidents, they are signs that your presence has settled somewhere deeper than simple attraction. When someone begins carrying pieces of your conversations into everyday life, it usually means you have become part of their emotional world. That doesn't guarantee every relationship will last forever, and it doesn't mean every story ends the way we hope. But it does remind us that meaningful connections leave lasting marks. Before we continue, take a second to think about someone who has ever made you feel completely understood. Chances are you still remember them today. Now ask yourself something even more interesting. Could someone be remembering you in exactly the same quiet way? The answer may be closer than you think, and what comes next will help you recognize those signs with completely fresh eyes. There is a side of relationships that people rarely talk about. We hear endless advice about getting attention, keeping someone interested, or making them chase you. Some of that can be useful, but it often misses something much more meaningful. It almost never explains what it truly looks like when you have reached a man's heart in a deep and lasting way. Not just catching his eye, not just making him admire you, but touching something inside him that changes how he experiences your presence. Over the years, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. There is a huge difference between a man who thinks you're attractive and a man who is deeply affected by the person you are. Those are not the same experience, even though they can look similar at first. Many wonderful, kind, and intelligent women mistake one for the other. They see excitement and believe it must be deep love. Or they feel a powerful connection and naturally hope he feels it just as strongly. Then reality unfolds differently and the disappointment cuts much deeper than expected. It creates questions that are difficult to answer and feelings that are hard to explain to anyone else. I don't want that confusion for you. So stay with me, because what we're about to explore could completely change how you understand emotional connection. By the end, you'll know why some people remain unforgettable while others slowly disappear from memory, even if everything seemed perfect on the surface. Let's talk about what genuine emotional impact actually looks like. Not the kind that only lasts during exciting conversations or fun weekends, but the kind that quietly stays with someone long after the moment has passed. There are people who enjoy your company when life feels easy. They text late at night, they laugh with you, they make plans, everything seems promising. Then, without much warning, they pull away. They become distant, conversations lose depth, and you begin wondering what changed. You replay every message and every interaction, searching for something you might have done wrong. The truth is often much simpler than the stories we tell ourselves. Sometimes you had their attention, maybe even their admiration, but they never reached the deeper emotional place where lasting connection grows. That doesn't mean you weren't enough. It doesn't mean you lacked value or beauty or kindness. Sometimes a person simply isn't emotionally ready for that level of closeness. Some people carry walls they haven't learned to lower. Others haven't yet developed the ability to truly receive the kind of love another person offers. Keep listening, because the next sign is one that many people completely overlook, even though it reveals more than words ever could. A person who has been deeply moved by you behaves differently, and those differences are usually quiet rather than dramatic. They remember little things without trying. Something you mentioned weeks ago suddenly appears in a conversation because it stayed in their mind. They ask about a goal you shared long ago because they genuinely wondered how it turned out. They notice changes in your mood before you say anything at all. Sometimes they simply look at you across a room with an expression that feels calm, thoughtful, almost private, as if they're trying to understand a feeling they can't quite explain. That kind of attention isn't created by excitement alone. It comes from emotional presence. It comes from someone whose inner world has been gently changed by knowing you. The beautiful part is that this kind of connection cannot be forced. There isn't a perfect message, a clever strategy, or a secret formula that guarantees it. You cannot make someone feel something authentic by following a script. Real connection grows naturally when two people meet each other honestly. That is why pretending to be someone else never works for very long. Truth always lasts longer than performance. Stay until the end because the next idea may completely change the way you think about being yourself in relationships. The strongest connections often begin when you stop trying so hard to impress someone and simply allow yourself to be seen. Not the polished version you think people expect. Not the version that never makes mistakes or never feels uncertain. The real version. The one who laughs naturally, speaks honestly, admits fears, and shares dreams without pretending to have everything figured out. That kind of honesty has a quiet power. It gives another person permission to lower their own guard as well. Deep relationships are rarely built through perfection. They grow through authenticity, patience, and emotional safety. When someone feels accepted around you, they begin associating your presence with peace instead of pressure. That feeling becomes incredibly difficult to replace. Many people spend years searching for it without realizing that it isn't excitement they miss, it's emotional comfort. It's the feeling of finally being understood without needing to explain every part of themselves. That is why some connections remain alive in memory long after distance or time enters the picture. They weren't built on appearances, they were built on something much harder to find. Keep watching, because the final thought in this section may help you release a belief that has been quietly hurting your confidence for much longer than you realize. If you've ever questioned whether you were too emotional, too caring, or too invested, I want you to consider another possibility. Maybe you weren't too much at all. Maybe you simply offered something valuable to someone who wasn't prepared to receive it. Many people carry invisible emotional limits they don't even recognize. They may enjoy closeness, yet become uncomfortable when love asks them to be vulnerable. They may appreciate kindness, yet struggle to return it consistently because they haven't healed their own fears. When that happens, it's easy to blame yourself. You begin believing you're asking for too much or expecting something unrealistic. But meaningful love has never been about lowering your standards until someone else feels comfortable. It has always been about finding a person whose emotional capacity matches the depth you're willing to share. That doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen with everyone. Yet when it does, you stop wondering whether you're too much, because the right person never treats your honesty like a burden. They see it as a gift. And once you understand that truth, you stop chasing temporary attention and begin recognizing the quiet signs of genuine connection that have been there all along. Before we continue, ask yourself one simple question. Have you been searching for approval, or have you been searching for someone who truly understands your heart? The answer may reveal more than you ever expected. When deep feelings are offered to someone who only wants a surface connection, the result often feels like rejection, even when your value has nothing to do with it. That kind of heartbreak leaves a lasting mark. It quietly teaches many people to make themselves smaller. They stop expressing what they truly feel. They begin acting as if they care less than they really do. They convince themselves that staying emotionally distant is safer than risking another disappointment. If you've ever done that, it's understandable. Protecting yourself after being hurt is a natural response. But over time, that protection can become a wall that keeps out the very closeness you long for. You cannot be fully understood while hiding your real self. You cannot build a meaningful connection while constantly performing a version of yourself that feels safer. Eventually, those walls have to come down, not with everyone, not all at once, but little by little, with someone who has shown they deserve your trust. Stay with me because the next sign is one of the strongest indicators that someone is capable of meeting you where you truly are, and once you recognize it, you'll start seeing relationships through an entirely different lens. So how do you know when someone is worthy of your honesty and vulnerability? One of the clearest answers is found in how they respond to your emotions. Not only the easy moments when you're smiling and everything feels light. Watch what happens when life becomes difficult. Notice how they respond when you're anxious, overwhelmed, disappointed, or simply having a hard day. A person who has formed a genuine emotional connection with you doesn't disappear the moment things become uncomfortable. They don't rush to dismiss your feelings or immediately change the subject because emotions make them uneasy. Instead, they remain present. They may not always know the perfect thing to say. They may even feel uncertain about how to help, but they stay. And sometimes staying is far more meaningful than having flawless advice. That quiet choice to remain beside you instead of stepping away speaks louder than dramatic promises ever could. It shows a willingness to share difficult moments rather than only enjoying the easy ones. Keep watching because what comes next explains why this kind of response reveals far more about someone's heart than any romantic words ever could. Many people grow up believing emotions should be solved as quickly as possible. They are encouraged to fix problems, move forward, and avoid sitting with uncomfortable feelings for too long. Because of that, when someone meets a person who expresses emotions openly and honestly, one of two things usually happens. They become uncomfortable and slowly pull away, or something inside them begins to change. They start wanting to understand instead of escape. They become more patient, more curious, more willing to listen than they ever expected themselves to be. Not because anyone demanded it from them, but because your presence inspired a different response. That quiet shift is incredibly meaningful. It shows that your authenticity encouraged growth instead of resistance. The most powerful connections often invite people to become better versions of themselves naturally. They don't grow through pressure or control. They grow because each person genuinely wants to show up more fully for the other. Before we continue, think about someone who made you want to become kinder, calmer, or more understanding without ever asking you to change. That's the kind of influence real emotional connection often creates. Another idea that is misunderstood in relationships is vulnerability. Many people imagine vulnerability as dramatic speeches, emotional breakdowns, or unforgettable movie scenes filled with tears and long confessions. Sometimes life unfolds that way, but more often vulnerability appears quietly. It shows itself during an ordinary evening conversation when someone suddenly shares a memory they've never mentioned before. It appears when they tell you about a fear they usually keep hidden or ask for your opinion about something that genuinely matters to them. It may seem casual, almost accidental, but those moments carry enormous meaning. People rarely share personal parts of themselves with someone they don't trust. That's why paying attention to ordinary conversations matters so much. Listen carefully to what they choose to reveal when no one is asking them to. Notice the stories they only tell you. Those quiet moments often say far more than grand declarations ever could. Stay until the end because the final sign in this section may be the one that people overlook most often, even though it reveals the deepest kind of care. There is another form of caring that deserves careful attention. It isn't about control, jealousy, or trying to limit your freedom. Those things are often mistaken for love, but they come from insecurity, not genuine connection. Real care feels completely different. It shows itself in thoughtful actions that ask for nothing in return. Someone notices when you're unusually quiet and gently checks in. They remember the things that bring you peace. They become concerned when you're treated unfairly, not because their pride has been hurt, but because your happiness truly matters to them. Your well-being quietly becomes important to theirs. They don't do these things to impress you or earn praise. They do them because caring has become natural. That kind of attention cannot be forced. It grows from sincere emotional investment. And when someone consistently shows that kind of quiet care without expecting recognition, it often means the connection has reached a place much deeper than attraction alone. Before moving forward, I want you to turn the focus toward yourself for a moment. Ask yourself honestly, not on your best days but on your hardest ones, whether you truly believe you deserve a relationship built on respect, emotional safety, and genuine understanding. Because the way you answer that question often shapes the kind of love you allow into your life. If you believe you deserve depth, you'll stop settling for moments that only imitate it, and you'll begin recognizing the difference between temporary attention and lasting connection. One thing has become clear after watching so many different relationships unfold. The women who experience the deepest and healthiest love are not always the ones who fit every beauty standard or have the most impressive careers. They are usually the women who have spent time getting to know themselves. They understand who they are beyond anyone else's opinion. There is a quiet confidence about them that doesn't need constant praise to survive. It isn't loud. It isn't arrogant. It isn't something they perform for attention. It is calm, steady, and deeply rooted. That quiet confidence changes the energy they bring into every relationship. When someone knows their own value, they stop asking another person to prove it every single day. And something remarkable happens when a man meets a woman who carries herself that way. He doesn't feel trapped in a constant test. He doesn't feel pressured to keep proving his worth every moment. Instead, he feels the comfort of being with someone genuine. That authenticity invites honesty in return. It encourages him to show up with more maturity, more openness, and more intention than he may have shown before. Stay with me because one small mindset shift near the end of this video could completely change the way you approach love from this day forward. So if you're wondering how to inspire that kind of connection, the answer may not be what you expect. It doesn't begin with finding the perfect words or learning the perfect dating strategy. It begins with you. Work on your own life, not because you're trying to earn someone's love, but because you deserve to enjoy the life you're building. Heal the places inside you that still question your worth. Spend time creating mornings you're excited to wake up to. Build friendships that remind you who you are. Invest in passions that make your eyes light up. Create a life that feels meaningful whether you're single or in a relationship. When your happiness no longer depends on someone else's attention, you begin carrying a different kind of energy. It isn't about pretending not to care. It's about genuinely enjoying your own journey. That sense of wholeness quietly changes every interaction. People notice it even when they can't explain why. Real connection grows much more naturally when two complete people meet than when two people are hoping someone else will fill what feels empty inside. Keep watching because the next idea explains the difference between healthy love and something that can easily be mistaken for it. There is an important difference between someone loving you deeply and someone becoming emotionally dependent on you. At first, those experiences can seem almost identical. Both may involve strong emotions, frequent attention, and intense excitement. But over time, the difference becomes impossible to ignore. A person who truly cares about you wants both of you to keep growing. They celebrate your independence. They respect your goals. Being with you inspires them to become kinder, wiser, and more emotionally present, not because they feel pressured, but because they genuinely want to become the best version of themselves. That is what healthy love looks like. On the other hand, some people mistake emotional need for deep connection. They move very quickly. They shower you with constant attention. They make you feel like the center of their entire world almost overnight. It can feel exciting, especially if you've waited a long time to feel seen. But eventually, you may realize that the intensity isn't really about who you are. It's about what you represent to them emotionally. That's a very different experience. Real connection grows with patience. It doesn't rush to convince you. Stay until the end because the next distinction could save you from confusing intensity with lasting love. Healthy love carries a quiet sense of peace beneath all its emotions. It doesn't constantly leave you guessing where you stand. It doesn't make every day feel like an emotional roller coaster. Instead, it brings steadiness. It gives you room to breathe. It supports your growth instead of exhausting your energy. If you've ever experienced a relationship that felt like a blazing fire at the beginning but left you confused and empty when it ended, that wasn't necessarily deep love. More often, it was intensity without a strong foundation. Excitement alone cannot build something that lasts. Lasting relationships are created through consistency, trust, patience, and emotional safety. The kind of love worth waiting for doesn't ask you to become smaller. It encourages you to become more fully yourself. It gives you energy rather than taking it away. It feels less like constantly trying to earn someone's affection and more like finally arriving somewhere you can rest. That feeling exists even if you haven't experienced it yet. Many people remember someone years later, not because of dramatic moments, but because that person helped them feel understood in a way no one else ever had. Those quiet memories often leave the deepest mark of all. That is why trying to force someone to feel deeply connected to you rarely works. Many people hear conversations like this and immediately begin asking themselves what they should say, how they should behave, or what strategy will create that kind of emotional response. It's a completely understandable question, but it leads in the wrong direction. The moment genuine connection becomes a performance, it begins losing the authenticity that creates it in the first place. Attraction can sometimes be influenced by confidence, appearance, or mystery. But true emotional closeness grows from honesty. It develops during ordinary conversations, shared laughter, difficult moments, and simple acts of kindness repeated over time. You cannot manufacture authenticity because authenticity only exists when you're no longer trying to manufacture anything. Everything we've talked about today returns to the same place. Know yourself. Heal where you need healing. Stop apologizing for your emotions. Stop shrinking your dreams to make someone else comfortable. Live in a way that feels true to who you are. When you do that, you naturally become memorable, not because you tried to be unforgettable, but because real people always leave the deepest impressions. Before this video ends, remember one final truth. The deepest kind of love isn't something you chase. It grows between two people who are willing to be fully themselves. You never have to earn the right to be deeply loved. You simply need the courage to become the fullest version of yourself. When the right connection arrives, it won't ask you to hide your heart. It will welcome it. And that quiet, steady feeling of finally being seen is the kind of love that changes two lives without needing loud words or dramatic moments. That is the love worth waiting for. That is the love worth preparing yourself to receive.